before we begin? Okay, so find a comfortable position and see what adjustments your body organically wants. So make an attunement to your antenna. Expanding your breath. And stretching it not just outward through the heart center, but expanding your breath both up towards the cosmos and down towards the earth. In fact, take a few breaths to feel the circuitry all the way up and all the way down. Follow the exhalation as deep as you can go towards the earth. And on the inhale, the rising energies take you towards the cosmos. Expanding a few more breaths, farther each breath. And next, coming into the heart, the deep heart, the energetic portal into the unseen world. Allow yourself to build a bridge here from your heart to your beloved's heart. Feel that arc of energy. And as that arc lights up with your connection, feel it activating a bridge or an arc to your guides and allies and all the energies, the supportive energies that raise the vibration of your partnership, that help heal and guide you on your path. With an open channel to the highest vibration, I invite you to look back at your material self. So if your center of gravity is in the spirit self, the higher self, expanded non-physical one, that's connected at the level of oversoul to your partner, to this tribe. So if that's where your center of gravity is, from that perspective, looking now at the person and the lifestyle and the personality and all of the doing and all of the habits from waking up in the morning, eating, exercising, working, your relationship to your space, looking at all of your habits and how the person interacts with your partner to co-create life, routines, and rituals. And observing it all objectively. So if there's judgment that arises, you just deepen your breath. Really clearly seeing that all of these rituals and routines are there to support you being love, you being light, you being on purpose in the world, what you're really here for. Take a few breaths in gratitude for all that your person does for you, for your full expression. And with an openness to upgrade that, with a curiosity of what can be more conducive of love, partnership, and of your full expression. Take 3 to 5 more breaths just to appreciate and accept it all. Last deep breath with a sound and a squeeze on your partner's body. So this week we get to brainstorm and mastermind and just share a bit about our lifestyle. The homework was, do you want to repeat the homework?
The homework was to choose a lifestyle problem or a
pattern.
Yeah, pattern, and approach it differently, and just see how that, approaching it differently, what it does.
Good. So, some of you may have done the homework and some of you may be coming here fresh from looking for inspiration. One of the things that I want to drop in is that nothing changes. This is Carl Jung's kind of paradoxical nature of change. His teaching is that nothing changes, when we resist it as well as when we accept it. So if we accept the way things are, from the place of accepting it, we can actually kind of, it's like it includes it, but then transcends to new possibilities. So a lot of times if we're like, I don't like this thing, and then I have to make a change, people will often be like, I have to break it down in order to break it through. And that's a lot more work than to really just be like, this pattern is this way because it served me at that time, and I accept that, and now let's see what else I can do to make the pattern even better. So I'll just drop that in to our conversation. Do you want to?
Yeah, in thinking about that too, there's, change is happening all the time. That's the only constant, is actually, as you've heard and know, the only constant is that there is change. And I know from my experience this past week that it was really more of an awareness of what was happening in the change and looking at those changes that made it possible for me to kind of get onto the wave of what that change is doing. So I don't have to make those changes myself. That was my experience with it. And I'll talk about it when we get into that.
Maybe we'll have you share first. We're basically just going to go around and share, whoever's got something, what you learned about yourself, what you want to upgrade. And of course there's we're all personal growth junkies. Everyone here is constantly stretching and growing and changing. But this is in the context of if I take responsibility for doing this piece, it will alchemically kind of shift to bring more love, harmony, ease, in the partnership, as opposed to whatever, maybe it was a point of contention, maybe not, but let's each just choose something and shine a light on it. And it's also just show of hands of who does New Year's resolutions. I know we kind of forced you through a bunch of financial stuff, but this is
goals. Yeah.
Right. And so here we are in February. And this is actually when when the luster of 2020 starts wearing off, like people are like, oh, why did I buy that big gym membership? So it's also looking at like, hey, it's still the beginning of the year. You know, what are the patterns that you're really changing, not just making those declarations about? Anyway, Michael, do you want to share what you observed this weekend and whatever change you plan or to make?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just saw something at, I forget where I saw it, on one of the news agencies, but there's a date, which is the give up your New Year's resolutions date. And they, it was funny. I think it was like January 17th or something like that. That's when the average person
drops it.
Yeah, gives it up. So, so for me, you know, I was in doing this homework. One of the things was, cleaning up our house, making our house run better. And one of the things that we've had as a contentious thing was doing dishes. And so in the past, what I've done is I won't do dishes for everybody because it just didn't feel right to me. So but I would do 3 times the amount of dishes that I used. So if I used a plate and a fork and a knife, that's 3 dishes. I would try and wash 9 dishes, when I took them to the sink. And that to me, would keep the house clean, or, move it far enough, as long as everybody else was at least, trying to take care of their own stuff. But what that ended up leaving was sometimes that wouldn't completely clean out the sink or the counter or whatever. And I was kind of leaving that as a notice. Okay, you can see that I've done all this work, but there's still dishes there. Whoever left those there, take note, and that was my mentality with it. My brother's visiting from Paris right now. He's staying with us for a couple of months, and he's just horrified, and his boyfriend is horrified if people leave dishes. They just can't believe that like humans would actually do that. It just doesn't seem like a regular thing, for them. So in keeping, with keeping my brother, so that he was feeling fairly relaxed in the house, I started doing that, where I do the dishes all the way, so I complete it so that, the kitchen looked good. And I noticed what I've noticed in this, especially in this past week, is it really doesn't take that much more effort to do that, but it's a lot easier for me in my mind. If I see that the kitchen is clean, it's a completion thing. And so then I noticed all of the other things in the house. Like I have a pattern, for my whole life of doing like a big hunk of something, doing the easy part of a project, but then leaving the rest of it. And so, we have projects all around the house that I've done half of it, but then the other half still isn't completed. And so I'm realizing that's the patterning that I figured out. And so for me, it was just kind of noticing the changes that were happening, kind of organically, and then like writing those patterns, myself of, completion. Once those things are complete, my mind is going to feel a lot better. The feng shui of the house is going to be better. I will be completing projects and getting them out of my psyche, where I have a bunch of them, just piling up my, cluttering my psyche right now. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. What I love about Michael's example isn't just the dishes, but like, hey, what if this year I looked at this underlying pattern of being not just a closer that starts the deal, but actually a finisher that finishes it as well. So that's beautiful. Who wants to share? Greg and Lisa?
So we did the homework, picking one of the things from the list and then going through what's the medicine and how do we meet in the middle and that whole thing.
Yeah, good.
So I think this one was really interesting. There. So the thing on the list was the sense of adventure and desire to travel. And it was really good for me to hear from Greg, because we've always had this joke from early. We have these jokes, 25 years running, like he's okay to be spontaneous as long as it's planned. Right? That came out of his mouth one day and we just thought that was the most hysterical thing. And so we've been, laughing about that for 25 years. But today I really think I understood something better, which is that, and because he's, I don't know, we're just diving deeper into some of the things that I think that we just took as surface, like, oh, he's introverted or he's really safety conscious. But the more that he's diving into his childhood trauma, like it's so fucking visceral. And so, when he was talking about like, I want to go travel and I want to do these things, but like, there's these like 10 things that I need to keep in mind. And I'm like thinking about Bella and the house and like this, if we could really like, I need to go into, you want to share?
Yeah.
Hurt yourself.
Basically, when it comes out to doing the adventures, for me, the comfort in that comes from some advanced prep. Like making sure that we're not getting packages delivered, that the water shut off in the house, all that kind of stuff. And also, on the financial side, making sure that all the disaster stuff, like making sure that the will is current and and all of that, so that if something disastrous happens, that I feel like we've kind of left things in a good place. And I kind of realized that over the course of our history, the times when adventures have kind of been ruined for me is when they were more spontaneous, and I spent my time focused on the 1,000 ways we were going to die instead of enjoying the adventure, and all of the logistics of things that weren't complete, that kind of kept me from being present.
Mm-hmm.
So if I understand, it was like, it's like an awareness of this is my pattern. Like, and Lisa then also understood you more. Is that, yeah, that's beautiful. That's the shift. It's like, okay, let's actually look at what's underneath this.
Yeah.
And that's
to understand that it's such a strong desire for me to have that present in our relationship. So we talked about how we can add that to a regular meeting where we're talking about, oh, what are the things that we're planning to do, so that just even having it in our dialogue, acknowledges the need that I have, and of course, letting go of non-monogamy. That's so interesting just to see how some of those things scratch that itch, but it wasn't necessarily fucking other people. My kids the next one, it wasn't that itch. It was like, it was the adventure of it. And it doesn't need to look that way.
Yeah.
So that's been really interesting to see.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's really deep. Good. Thank you guys. Let's keep going. I have a few more questions for you, but let's just go around the circle. We'll see if we circle back around.
And you guys did that one together, so that was.
Yeah, the exercise was, we did it each individually, and then we came together.
We reviewed it separately and then we talked about it.
Excellent. Yeah, it's almost more leveraged that way, where you both got to see what's your side of the coin.
Yeah.
Great. Totally. Okay, cool. Who else wants to share?
I can go.
Great.
So our lifestyle adjustment has been going to sleep earlier and getting more sleep. And I can't actually say we specifically did it because of homework. Like, it started because I got a really gnarly flu and couldn't get the fuck out of bed. But, unlike sort of my typical pattern, which would be to push myself through the flu and like still do as much as possible, I actually took time off and like let myself sleep. And then that sort of like started a newer pattern. And then consistently, Sharma and I have been going to bed somewhere between like 9 and maybe 11 at the latest. And that's a lot earlier than we normally do. Like, normally it's somewhere between 11 and 3.
Right.
and it's also like, not only is it earlier, but it's a more consistent.
Great.
And I know, at least for me, even in the course of like, whatever, it's been like a week and a half of starting to do this, I'm already seeing like a significant change in both like my levels of anxiety throughout the day. My work, there tends to be a lot of that, and also just like my overall brain function. And I've been finding that I'm having a way easier time actually prioritizing the really big things that matter, as opposed to defaulting to the easy things that I feel like I've got the brain power for. And so I probably still need like several more months of excess sleep to like actually rebalance, but it feels really good to be having started that lifestyle shift.
That's a big payoff for a week and a half investment. That's a really big, result.
Yeah.
Great. That's promising.
Yeah. Sleep is important.
I've been looking at how I pull back and shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been looking at it with James and with you and with Patrick and with Roxanne and just my life. And I don't know where I am with that. The main thing I've gotten to is that it's not easy for me to be in vulnerability. So I shut down until I'm ready to talk about things. And so I'm looking at the pattern of like, I feel like I'm being vulnerable and no one else thinks I'm being vulnerable. So I'm not really anywhere with that. That's what I've been contemplating throughout the week.
So I'm curious if I can ask one more question. How does it feel when you are being vulnerable?
It depends on the time. The reality is I usually feel vulnerable even if I'm not expressing it. So I don't know that I feel a huge difference. I just don't know that other people experience my vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. How does it feel when other people do experience your vulnerability?
Usually fine. I don't even really know how to be. I think I'm being vulnerable and no one experiences it that way.
Uh-huh. Thank you. Yeah, sounds like a good start to a deep inquiry.
Yeah, the just recognition of it is
huge.
Yeah, is always the biggest part of it. I always say it's like 90% of it. And
it's actually step 1 in the 12 steps.
it is, but it's the biggest one. It's the being aware of it is consciousness. You're conscious of it, and consciousness is consciousness. It's
no. So I love what you're saying, because my favorite book is The Way of Love. I mean, like, this book has such gold in it. And when it comes to talking about change, DeMello says that as soon as the will comes in, the personality comes in and tries to start changing something, it's actually creating more of the same, because it's the personality that created that pattern, and now the personality is creating a new pattern. And he says, if you want to really transform, bring the awareness in, and awareness does the transformation for you. And I'm paraphrasing. I will find the quote and post it on the group, but it rocks my world, especially as a coach and a, mentor who's like trying to help people change. And it's like, awareness is really the gold. So thank you for highlighting that. Mm-hmm. Good. Beautiful. Who wants to go next?
We'll go. So the issue that I was mostly focused on this week was time, and the difference between how much time we had. And my awareness was being up in the cabin alone and having a lot of time, it was like, and I'm thinking about Marina this whole time. I'm contemplating what her day is like, knowing that she's getting up with Jazz, getting her off to school, jumping on, trying to, juggle everything. I'm just really aware of that vast discrepancy of lifestyles. And it gives me just a lot of compassion and a lot of respect for like her ability to show up at all in this relationship, especially with the distance and all that. So, and we had a little conversation about her comment last week about me being like sensitive to, her changing an appointment or being late or having to cancel or whatever. And I've gotten really comfortable. It used to be on my deal breaker list. It was like, okay, if somebody consistently does that, that means they don't respect me, and then I'm out because I can't be in a relationship with someone who doesn't respect me. But I've really shifted to just really dropping in and understanding that difference and just accepting it. And just the blessing that I'm looking at is that I could move. I would like to have her and Jazz here. I would like to have some of that chaos in my space. I would appreciate not being alone and having even the co-parenting responsibility is something I'm like, not only curious about, I'm seeing there's medicine there for me. And that's a huge lifestyle change for me to acknowledge after 55 years of not being a dad, not being married, to like thinking about embracing that. And then the other thing was, I didn't get a chance to aspect it. I think that's the next level for me to really get it at a deeper level, is to like put myself in her shoes and have that conversation about.
Great.
I'm looking forward to that. But it was really fun just with the flow of, like Greg was saying, I still have this need for some structure, like our date night, or when we're leaving and we're not going to see each other for a while. I feel completely exposed and vulnerable if we don't have our next date figured out. Like if we don't know when we're going to see each other next, I feel like I'm hanging in space, and it's very uncomfortable. So I do need just enough structure to hold on to some, okay, it's only 3 weeks, I can make it. And that's what I'm realizing about time. It's very, very valuable. And it's also so much how you look at it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know who else felt this, but Greg, I felt you so strongly just in sharing the vulnerability of like saying goodbye to your beloved and needing to know when you see them next. Like, thank you for acknowledging, like, this is a strategy that, is like, I'm attached to, and I'm not willing to let it go because it gives me my sanity. I just felt for you in that moment, partly because I can totally relate, but the vulnerability and I know what it is. I actually respect when someone says, this is how you can treat me so I can be at my best. And then I trust that person because they know that about themselves. And it's like you're being a stand for something that really works for you. And a lot of people on the personal growth path are like, oh, I want to change that. I want to be able to be okay with the unknown or the uncertainty. And then they're betraying themselves. They're betraying the part of them that really needs something. So I appreciate you knowing yourself well enough to articulate, this is what I need.
Can I say something too? In your first part, you talked about this wanting to have a little more of Marina's chaos, to share, and I've been noticing with a lot of the like Zen masters, some of them that as well, but the Zen masters coming to a place where they're at this place of contentment, but they're with themselves, and it's a very lonely place, but they look at that, even the ascetics, like, they move away from sexuality because they're spiritually above that. And what you're pointing at is actually the next step beyond what those ascetics have discovered in enlightenment. It's being able to be in that enlightened place, even with the chaos of having a partner
and the messiness of sex and
all of that stuff. So that's actually what you're kind of leapfrogging past that Zen level.
Mhm.
And I'm excited about that. But that's kind of what you're pointing at with that yearning and that longing to have that messiness in your life.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Mm.
Mm. Mm. There's a lot in my chaos, so I'm like struggling with which one should I pick. Um, and I think it's the one with like self-care and solo time that's been coming up, and the lack of that. So and also like with the trauma that came up for me a couple of months ago, I've been really putting a lot of attention into that. And when that comes up, you got to like double up on self-care apparently. So I've been almost like forced to set those boundaries or time.
Would you be willing, Marina, to give us a headline or a tagline of when you say the trauma that came up, how are you framing that for yourself? What are you calling that trauma? Peace, obviously, it's a piece.
It's a piece of like the context of it, like what
we know the story of what happened. It's a question of how are you, because now that you're not in it,
yeah,
and you're trying to self-care in kind of to as an antidote for it. I'm curious, like, how do you hold it? What do you call it to yourself? What do you know?
I'm actually calling it presence, just
Okay.
holding a lot of presence. I actually sent this book to Michael about presence. It's at the fundamentals of all breath work.
Yeah.
It's really being conscious with your breath and just holding tremendous presence to whatever is happening.
Excellent.
And it's really, really powerful because it provided me that container, the space that I can hold it and meet it at whatever stage and no matter how long it's going to go on for. Or
awesome. Okay, cool. And the background for the sake of the group, all of us are doing this deep work, and our work looks very unique, to each of us. And most of us have trauma pieces that we're working on that have come up, even in the year that we've known each other. And trauma is actually something from the past. By definition, it's something that it was so intense we couldn't handle it, so a part of us left, or a part of us abandoned ourselves, and then left us with this kind of soul loss. And then now in the future moment, or in the present moment, something happens that looks like that past thing, and then all of a sudden we're in a flashback, or we're having all kinds of beliefs that were appropriate to that time that aren't appropriate to this present moment. And so I really love, Marina, for you to say, the medicine is presence. Like I'm working on presence now, because I had that, it's part of it. It's like, it's in the present moment that we can do the soul retrieval. It's only by being fully here now that all of our soul can come back. So I'm delighted to hear that, because the stories for each of us are separate and different, but the antidote for all of us is actually presence. So I love that's relevant for the whole group.
Yeah, thank you.
What else? Tell us more.
Well, I can go a little more into the depth of not into the story, but the medicine of that. It has to do with like narcissism and tolerating narcissism in my life, and it sparks up as like triggers of people, those traits that I'm just like, I can sense that, and the medicine to that is really know my boundaries and set them clearly for myself. It's not, I don't see it as a bad thing. I actually see that as medicine now, being able to set those limits for myself.
Yeah.
And tolerations. So it's actually really good. I'm still exploring how to voice it and how to set those, because I'm not really used to that. But it's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Good. It's deep work, especially when narcissism, for example, is a pathological diagnostic, right? But if we take off the pathology of it, it is true that those of us who are empaths that are like deep feeling, that feel for others, tend to magnetize and attract like self-absorbed people. I won't say narcissism, which is the pathological part, but if there's a polarity, one is, that someone's really full of themselves and self-absorbed and it's all about them. And the other polarity is an empath who's like really sensitive to others and in service to others and care, and then we get this codependent enmeshment. And I'm trying to generalize it because I'm saying it is a general pattern. And many of us in partnerships can look at how one of us, like maybe I'm the one who's being self-obsessed because of my book launch or whatever. Like Michael might then be the other pole, which is like over taking care of me and then overstepping his own boundaries, right? At different times he might be in some obsessed, like self-obsessed place. And then I might go to the other pole. And I'm wanting to point out these polarities in a healthy, not healthy, but like when they're naturally imbalanced. And then there's the pathological extreme parts, not to deny that there's narcissism in your history, just as there was, my mother was bipolar. So I have this wounding and trauma around bipolar people. And, but I'm going on a rant because oftentimes when we diagnose something, we kind of dismiss it and it's like, oh, it's unhealthy. But to actually own that that's in us as well. Like the antidote for an empath is to say, whoa, if I'm attracting narcissists, and this is a deep thing, I need to own the inner narcissist. And what does the inner narcissist do? It's like, that part of me needs to set boundaries. That part of me actually needs to take care of me first. And so the antidote, the healing, the medicine is in the opposite a lot of times.
Yeah, that's been coming up a lot too, this whole opposition and things with like everything. And I don't know if there's a midline to it. Like we're talking about balance and meeting halfway. I don't know if that exists. It's almost like there's the inhale and the exhale, and there's nothing in between really. Mm-hmm. Like there's a process of moments, but so I'm still playing with this and really accepting both, that I could be one, and there's fully that other space, which I don't have to fight, but there's like an equilibrium between the fullness of both extremes of something.
Yeah. And I love that you're playing with it. And anytime we get into black or white thinking or all or nothing thinking, then we're off base. Like it seems that way. And so let's keep working with it until it, and it's not, this is really, actually, I should post Daniel's 5-minute video on multi-perspectival navigating reality through multiple perspectives. And the reason I'm saying this is because whenever we think, hey, these are the two sides, I want the middle ground. That's actually like saying one's a square and one's a circle. Let me get to a squarish circle thing. And the square circle thing is neither a square or a circle. It's actually is not a compromise. So I'm going to post this video because what it offers us is that it's much more dimensional than taking two planes and just collapsing them. Because when we do that, we're off. But we're just off. We're not meeting anybody's needs when we're in the squarish circle thing.
Yeah.
So this is this is a really fun, juicy conversation. And I'm hoping that others can see themselves in it. Is there anything more before we go to Renee? Anything more you guys want to share?
I'm complete.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Well, the thing that Todd and I watched the video, some of it Friday and the rest of it yesterday. And the one example that I would say that we've been working with a lot over the last couple of months is the pace of our relationship. So, so I get on a plane, go to a client's office. I'm like meetings all day, working in the evening, like just driving through my day. And I have, I'm at that pace for 3 or 4 days in a week. And then I fly home and I tend to come in our house in that same pace. And so what his request of me was to slow down and to really be conscious of sinking back into what I kind of own as my feminine energy, and which is that more natural, slow flow state. And, you know, as I have done that, it's not only like created the opening for him to come to me, but it really has reset me in a way that now I'm trying to approach those 3 or 4 days a week differently, of not like not only being in that space from a real masculine driving place, but more bringing that flow energy into that as well. So we've been playing with that to really help, you know, help that kind of transition back home from being apart during the week.
Yeah, beautiful.
Mm.
This is really deep wisdom. Allison Armstrong does a lot of work on this front, like these polarities of where women will put on these, you know, masculine energies, and then all of a sudden the interaction with their husbands is like, you know, is off, and it's astute and beautiful that the two of you are kind of noticing the pattern and self-correcting or adjusting.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I have one client who comes home. She works at she's a dental assistant. She comes home and before coming to her beloved, she literally does a routine in her car, in the garage. You know, she lights incense, she does whatever she needs to shake off the day in her car, in the garage, before entering the house, because she wants to enter it as a temple, as a goddess, you know, to come to her beloved. Because otherwise she's bringing people's dental hygiene with her. And she's like, it's not a pretty, you know. So I love this. I love that you're both working together on that.
It reminds me too of the stories that they tell in the temple, you know, the temple arts field, which is that the temples in ancient times were used to take the war out of the warriors so they could integrate again with their families. And it's like you're out there doing battle, you know, with your masculine self in the business world. And you know, that maybe there's some place, some temple, and like Kamala Devi's talking about, that temple for this other woman is her car. You know, when she gets home, she does that temple, those temple arts to transition.
We talked, Lori, about you taking a day off. I'm flashing back. Didn't we talk like
for Renee? Or
sorry, Renee.
You said Lori because Lori handlers. Or?
Yeah, no, because Todd does.
Oh.
Todd's with Lori right now, so she's with us. But
Yeah.
Renee, we at some point, you know, talking about that for your temple arts, for your priestessing. How's that feel or go? Is that a possibility on the horizon?
It is. It's something that I'm doing more of, taking my Fridays for me. And right now I'm doing about 2 Fridays a month where I try to take at least an afternoon off or the entire day. Just trying to kind of get everyone on my team used to that.
Yeah.
And kind of just take that time and yeah, it's been slower happening than I might like. And what ends up happening is it puts more pressure on the other days of the week. So, you know, you end up working a 50-hour week in 4 days instead of 5, you know. So I'm just trying to balance that, but definitely because I'm doing writing right now, I'm taking a regular weekly writing workshop actually that Lori's teaching, because she teaches a practice called wild writing, which is kind of a stream of consciousness writing. And I'm loving that practice, and it's actually bringing me into that flow state. And I'm doing that on Tuesdays in the middle of a work day, which would have been unheard of in years past for me to take that time out. But I'm doing it. So Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, that brings up a big question for me for the group. And I wanted to see a show of hands. And I know that Kirsten and Jonathan aren't here, and Alex and Alex and Tyler are in New Zealand, but like who, like if we wanted to do more journaling, as you know, like, hey, I mentioned awareness is this golden tool. Well, one of the, like the number one power tool to increase our awareness is actually journaling, is actually, you know, the stream of consciousness working on ourselves. I want to see who in the group are journalers, like who journals. So we've got, yeah. And then there's, if there's a willingness to do some journaling, I know this isn't the week, like we're masterminding now. This isn't the week to give you guys more homework. So I'm not going to do it now, but I am going to plant the seed that journaling more than anything else for, as Michael said, it's like, you want to catch the flow of change to, like as a surfer, it's like, oh, there's change is happening. How do I position myself so that I'm in the wave and I can just go with the change? Like journaling is the way to position yourself, because you start to become more self-aware and then change happens. And it's ironic because people feel like they're doing nothing. You know, but what we're doing is we're observing the mind by writing, and that observation of the mind, as quantum physicists will tell you, when you observe something, it changes it more than anything else. And it's the deepest way to change our thinking is to actually journal. So yeah, I want to plant that seed. I also want to see what is alive, you know, in this next half hour that we have together. We can go deeper into some of these themes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more kind of feedback. You know, I feel a cauldron that we've created with this group, you know, of those of us that are here now.
Yeah, what we've, after hearing everything that we're sharing, what is new that's arising for you? So what's coming up as a result of the listening? Lori, or fucking, that is so wild. She's in my space right now.
It's hysterical. The thing that's coming up for me about the writing, because I've ended up using writing as a way to communicate with a lover or beloved or a new relationship, to really build deep intimacy and deep connection. And I've really found that to be a powerful practice. And yeah, it's just been a really powerful practice.
Is it writing love notes? Is it writing emails? Is it texting? What kind of writing?
All of it, really. But I've done a lot of writing long emails about, you know, just whatever topic is coming up for me. And there's this one format that Lori had introduced me, you know, list 25 things you don't know about me. You know, or these are 25 things that I want you to know. But really going deep and not saying, you know, I have red hair, you know, whatever, but going, you know, what are those deep, really important things that I want somebody to know about me and who I am? And it's just been a really powerful practice to help build intimacy. And what made me think of it was Sharmila talking about vulnerability, because, you know, it's been a doorway of really getting vulnerable on the page and then sharing that with someone.
Thank you. Let's talk more about vulnerability, not necessarily Sharmila's. But, you know, I asked Sharmila, how does it feel when we're vulnerable with others, or when others experience our vulnerability? And I want to hear the answers that others have to that question. Like when you're being vulnerable and the other is witnessing you or holding you in it, what does that do for your relationship? What does that do for the person or for you?
For me, when I get really vulnerable with someone, it connects me to that person, because I'm allowing them to see what's beneath the veneer, right? And really let them know who I am down deep, and that creates a connection. It creates a bond, an energetic bond, that I, just, yeah.
Good. When we feel into that, like, because we all have a felt sense of that bond, like, oh, I know when I'm on the inside of the inside with my beloved. I want to ask the group a little bit more about this intimacy, this quality of intimacy, and how we can expand it more, or how we can, how do we get there?
I had some experience with this, recently, when Lisa and I were really taking a look at kind of where we were in monogamy versus non-monogamy. And one of the awarenesses that I had after the fact was that there was a lot that I had kind of built up, a lot of unsaid things that I had kind of built up over time. And I ended up doing journaling. When you asked about that, I kind of said, sometimes I journal, and I historically have done that in the times when I'm kind of feeling overwhelmed, like I need to process some stuff, because I'll think about things all the time, but there is something a little bit different about externalizing it and getting it out in front of me, and it actually made things easier to share. And the result of that, when we actually sat down and kind of compared notes of, ideal state for our relationship, or the things that have been issues or challenges in the past, the awareness that I had in that moment was that she actually started to share things that she had unsaid. And so me getting vulnerable, really gave her permission to do the same. And as a result of that, I think we ended up having more meaningful conversation, and we went to a deeper level because of that. And and it was a little nerve wracking, to initiate, to start that. But after doing that, now I think I'm more likely to just say what's on our mind, and we've actually talked about that, about not leaving things unsaid, and just putting the shit on the table so that we can, when something comes up. And so for us, it's been about kind of decreasing that space, so that when something comes up, we can just put it out there. And I resonate a lot with what Sharmila was saying about kind of shutting down and processing things. And that's historically the way I've been when we've gotten into something that's a triggering event. I would kind of shut down and need to think about it. And it could be weeks before I would be ready to kind of come back and re-engage in that topic. And so the awareness of kind of sharing, getting vulnerable, and seeing how she responded to it makes me want to have that vulnerability a little bit faster, and to just kind of put it out there, even just to say, this is triggering me. Because I wouldn't even say that. I would just kind of shut down and go inward. And now I've gotten into the habit of just saying, this is bringing some stuff up for me. So I'd really like to think about this and talk about it later. And then she can not react or plug in emotionally to that and just go, okay, he needs some space. We'll come back and revisit that. And just that alone has changed the dynamic of our relationship. because
you brought this up a little bit last week. I was so touched by the way you framed it, Greg. It was like, right now what you're framing is that when you speak the unspeakable, or you say you say the difficult things, it actually brings you closer. We usually don't say it because we're afraid it's going to bring us farther, but it actually closes the gap, and now we're in it together. And you're saying that beautiful. Last week you mentioned this thing around like, this is triggering me. And the way that you framed it last week was almost like with an awareness that a trigger pulls a trip line to something in the past, and it's not necessarily even you, it's just now a trip line's pulled, so I can actually say there's something underneath this, and then as I go into the underneath it, you understand me more, or I can feel you more, or we can be in it together, as opposed to, well, you triggered me, pushing that person away, fuck you, you're dangerous, oh no, you're gonna, like the bomb's gonna explode, and then all of a sudden there's, so it's really, when triggers come up, triggers are actually a moment of, we could either get really far away because of this, or we could get really close because of this. And I feel, Greg, in your last two shares, that you've been leaning in that moment when you used to lean out.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that you wanted to say on that, Greg? Or is that?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, more on speaking. I'd love to hear others talk about speaking into the difficult stuff, like how we, because I think that is a real key to being vulnerable, is like, I'm going to share the thing that you'll either judge me for, or might push us away, or maybe you'll feel judged if I say this, right?
Yeah.
Marina?
Yeah. Well, of course, when we name vulnerability, Brené Brown comes to mind a lot. And actually, if we look in the dictionary to define vulnerability, I think the definition is so outdated. It's something like putting yourself in danger of, like, exposing yourself, being exposed and putting yourself in danger. And the way Brené Brown defines vulnerability is actually, that's the birthplace of any, connection and innovation. So anything new can only be born from that place of deep vulnerability. Speaking the most uncertain thing or something. And I think just for me personally, the more I do it, the more I get, it's not like the fear goes away. The fear is always there, but it's like, I just know that there's something really juicy and sweet on the other end of it. I think I trust the leap more than anything now. And the more I of leaning into it, how Greg was saying, that gets easier, but the fear never diminishes. Yeah.
I really feel the depth of a connection. And I think one of the interesting dynamics that I'm observing is how much masculine and feminine we all flow between, all of us, and how beautiful, if we can really be conscious about that. With vulnerability, it's instant deep connection when I let myself go there, and I actually push myself over that uncomfortable edge to say the thing that needs to be said that I'm afraid that I don't want to say. But I've also realized how important, like Greg was saying, that when she does it, it makes it easier for him to do it. And when he does it, it makes it easier for her to do it. And there's this collaboration that happens when we drop into that space. And I think one thing that I'm really conscious about is staying in that conscious masking of witness without judgment. When my partner is taking that scary leap to go over the edge and share that thing that she doesn't want to say, is just hold back from any kind of fixing. There's no fixing whatsoever. Just total presence, total witness, and creating that safe space for her to know that this is good. Do this more. Do it again. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to try to fix you. And then having that feeling reciprocated. She does a great job of letting me be myself. And I think what it points to is that radical self-acceptance. Like if she has enough confidence to accept herself, and this is my scariest, darkest part, and I'm going to share it with you. She's willing to accept that, and I'm willing to accept that without fixing it. Then from that beginning is that seed of transformation. Like you were saying earlier, don't resist it. Like hold it and just be with it without judgment, and then let the medicine come up.
Right.
I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that's what's coming up for me.
You've inspired me, Greg. What I want to do, I have to share with the group that when I've had a lot of resistance. I've done a lot of masterminds, and there's often an emphasis on the masculine mastermind that's like, oh, someone's going to bring an issue to the group, and then that person, whether they're on the hot seat or they get the advice, or we're trying to fix their this or grow. And like, my preference is always the vulnerability circles, like those sacred talking stick spaces where you go into ceremony and each person shares like, I want to reveal this from the depths of my heart more because it's a safe space. And, I'd like, if we don't mind poking the bear a little bit and waking James up, I'd like to actually close the class with each of us sharing something somewhat vulnerable, and nobody's going to cross talk or advise or try to fix anything, but to really just say, this theme that we're looking at is our lifestyle and all of our habits and our personality. And if we really take a moment to self-assess and feel one thing that you most resist or judge about yourself, okay? Like, who cares what the rest of the group, whether they judge it or not, but what's the one thing that you most judge about yourself? And I'm going to ask us to bring that into the light of the circle. And we'll just hold it with, thank you for sharing. And so that each of us can bring that up out of the judgment, out of the shadows, and just say, I'm going to speak this thing. So take a few breaths and kind of self-assess. And it might be about your lifestyle, your pattern, or your relationship, particularly because we're focused on sex and love and, spirituality. If it's something in those categories, what do you most judge about yourself? 3 more breaths. Who wants to start?
I'll go. Lately, and it's actually not lately. This has been a couple of years. I'm really judging myself. You ever heard the book The War of Art? And Presser talks about this resistance, and when you get into resistance, it's this like the creative block, and you're trying to, and that's the artist's battle, is to get through the resistance. I'm having this resistance with my business, with like engaging in my business with passion. And I've been very like passive and reactive and complacent, like in this really comfort zone. And it's like, there's a part of my drive and my ambition that just seems to be gone. And it's not only got me uncomfortable, but it's actually got me worried about because I haven't been tending the garden of my business. Mm-hmm. And some of the plants are dying, and it's fucking scary.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Where I probably carry more guilt or shame is around wishing to be more self-reliant. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can go next. For me, it's, my deepest wounding, my deepest core wound is around being good or doing the right thing. And so I've set up this like lifestyle for myself of, trying to be, ethical and trying to be, all of these things, and what it leads me to is I'll have judgment, of others if they're not perfect, if they're not doing things the way that I think they should be done. And so it's keeping a big separation, between me, and it makes me really uncomfortable. Like I feel like an outsider because I'm striving to be like better than myself. And that I feel like our society and that, my lovers and everybody else should be, could be better. And instead of just being able to accept, who they are and just letting things flow. So yeah, that's my pattern.
Thank you. I'll share next. So this year I came out as non-binary. It was just something I felt for a long time, but to actually say, hey, they, them is my pronoun, which I have so much there's like dysmorphia because I'm so fucking feminine, like even wearing this like lipstick right now, like I have no desire to present as male, but the dissonance between how my actual inner experience and my identity is and what people see, it's like an enormous gap. And the judgment is, like they don't understand or I feel misunderstood, but it's like, yeah, it's just feeling this weird thing of not at all feeling seen. And I don't know how to close that gap because I am, in this feminine form. So it's something that I have a lot of shame about because I'm like, I have such a rich inner experience that feels misunderstood. And maybe my ego likes the specialness of being misunderstood. There's layers and layers to it. But it's something that I appreciate you're hearing me in and being seen in by the people that are closest to me.
Thank you.
Who's next? Greg and Lisa first, and then Lori. Or fucking, that's Renee. So funny. I just need to say I have a hard enough time keeping all of my lovers' names straight. Now I'm having Todd's lovers' names straight. Thank you, Lisa and Greg.
Sure. Yeah, I have judgment, have had for a long time, judgment around my inability to create sustainable exercise and eating habits despite having multiple degrees, being a licensed healthcare provider and working in the nutrition industry. And it's just something that I've struggled with for a long time. And there's just such a gap between who I am on the inside and what I know is possible for myself and what happens externally.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Authenticity and transparency is a huge part of how I present professionally. So the place that I currently feel inauthentic or incongruent about is the expression of my sexuality and sexual energy. And, you know, you know, part of it is I identify as pansexual, with, you know, a few years of exploring that, and then, you know, and that will be kind of put away for a while. I feel like there's a possibility for me to share that, which is kind of, you know, we're no longer non-monogamous, so that's not what I'll be sharing, but I think there's a possibility for me to share that more publicly, including with my kid. That's the one thing that I have not shared with my kid. And kind of a connected to that is, you know, is Greg and I coming together and recreating our relationship. And we have an awesome, juicy bucket list that's waiting to be, you know, broken into. And, you know, we are very aligned in our future vision for this hot, sexy relationship that, you know, that we want to be in, where we just can't get enough of each other. And we don't have that right now. And I talk about sex a lot in my work with my clients. Ironically, it's with entrepreneurs, but it's all connected. And so I'm feeling a little like I could talk it. And of course I have the experience, but I'm just feeling a little bit, you know, of incongruency because I don't have it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, Renee.
You got it. I just wanted to acknowledge. So my big core wounding story is tied to like not being enough. And I have spent decades in corporate America and doing freelance work and feeling like the landscape has really changed around that, and feeling like, you know, the end of that road is not too far away. And then being at this place in my life to go like, okay, then what now? Knowing that I'm really being called to exist in the world in a much more feminine place and a much more creative place. And yet like just being fucking daunted by like, how do I get from where I'm at to where I want to go? And what does that even look like when like I'm the major breadwinner in our household and all of this? I mean, I have people that I'm responsible for, and just feeling really daunted by that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going. Okay. It's interesting. Everyone shared these like life pattern vulnerabilities, but I think for me the thing that actually feels more vulnerable is just current, which is I'm having a hard time being able to like come back from and really reconnect with Sharmila post her trip to Brazil. You know, it was just really fucking hard for me, and I feel like I stretched super intensely, and I stretched to a place where it's like it kind of feels like I overstretched the rubber band and it's not able to like retake shape on its own. And well, if I'm being honest, it's not actually that I overstretched. Like, there's part of me that doesn't want to admit that I'm mad at Sharmila for making me stretch that much. And like in that, there's this place where since she got home, like I've been really feeling like I want her to reach out and like put forth the effort to like draw me back into connection. And she's mostly been, I think, feeling shut down as a result of not feeling me just like totally open and ready for her to drop back in. And so that hasn't been happening. And and I think the part of the vulnerable part for me is like there's a fear in it of like not knowing how this shifts, because there's a place in me that's like not wanting to, for lack of a better way of saying this, like not wanting to be the bigger person and like come through all of the challenge and like fix it for both of us, but like wanting to feel like she's willing to kind of step into that role. And there's a stuckness in that I'm kind of struggling with for I think it's almost a couple weeks now since she got home.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess for me, the pattern is the shift between what I experience as like really dramatically over emotional and then just like a lack of emotion, where like I feel like I feel so big and it feels so overwhelming, and I get really scared in those feelings of like I'm not going to be received or loved or accepted, or so then I just don't feel, and then I get stuck in the don't feel and I don't know how to feel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a kind of a group inquiry, and it's around, hold on, how do I put it back to, there we go. The group inquiry is look at yourself as a listener. You know, as we went around the sacred circle and each person sharing, like really honestly observe how, like, there's a part of you that went into, ooh, I could help this person, or maybe they should do this, or I want to support that, or, you know, just notice if there's a fixer in you that arose as you were listening. And then also, you know, and welcome that's human. But then also the other voice in you that is like, wow, how human, like I feel that too, I get that, I resonate, you know, the empathetic part of you that's just like, wow, you know, they're sharing that and I've been there, so I could feel with you, and just like embrace that empathetic muscle, which is actually the muscle that we're stretching by listening with it and with the open heart, not cross talking. It's like, can we just be with each other in whatever is arising? So I, you know, celebrate these shares. And for those couples that are watching us on video, like if you feel moved to leave us a little video with your disclosure, we'd love to hold you in that too. I know that's extra vulnerable, but that's what you get for missing the class. But yeah, it'd be sweet. It'd be sweet to hear what you most judge yourself for. And then the final inquiry after voicing this, like when you put it into the light, you realize, you know, it's not as big or as bad as when we're holding it in the shadow. Like we kind of put it on the altar and we're appreciating each person's share, and that next level of, can I just hold this and accept it even more? And maybe it changes as a result of just speaking it. So I'm going to post this quote about acceptance. I really feel that's been the theme of the call. And the idea in it is that that's the natural way. Like if you look at the way plants grow or animals, flourish, they're not trying to judge themselves and be better plants or animals. They're just accepting like, oh, this root got gnarled, or this, animal had this encounter. How do I accept that and move on? And it's the natural way of being. So I'll post that quote. And then I invite you to continue this inquiry through this month. And then we're going to switch the dates of next call earlier. So we'll be meeting before James Sharmala, myself, and Michael go to Bali. So that's exciting. But I would love to, bless everyone for Valentine's and hope that you have a really heartfelt, juicy Valentine's, and maybe bring this practice, doing a dyad or being even more vulnerable by sharing more, speaking into the unspeakable, creating more space to hear each other at some point over the Valentine's celebration. I think that'll be sweet to feel that the others in the circle are also doing that too, to kind of feel the group synergy, that it's not just your own Valentine's celebration, but we're all celebrating love this month. Any final words?
So you want us to post, I wasn't clear on what you wanted us.
I want you to have a wonderful Valentine's. No more homework except the observing and the accepting and the disclosing the uncomfortable. Yeah.
It just feels so uncomfortable.
Michael's like, I'm supposed to sit with all those shares. How about a word from each person as we say goodbye? So, word of what's in your heart right now. Michael's uncomfortable.
Mine is love. Yeah, I'm feeling love, as uncomfortable as it is.
Thank you.
Mine is vulnerable.
No. I don't know yet. Somebody else.
Close came up for me.
I've never used this word to describe an emotion, but soft.
Aww.
My word is curiosity. It's like a respect. I guess honoring what we have and the humanity.
Beautiful. Renee?
I would say serene.
Sweet.
Tender.
Thank you, Shamla. Thank you to everyone. Blessings.
Did you say your word?
Oh.
Is your word Lori?
I don't know if I said a word.
You did.
Okay, so I feel blessed. I feel really blessed. Thank you.
Love you.
Wait. One little announcement.
Yes.
Anyone in San Diego, Michael and you, if I can call you afterwards, you know how women get together so easily and play? And like even at a temple night, you'll see 10 women just huddling up and just having fun. And the guys are always watching and they're like talking about stuff and the women are just like diving in deep. At Kenny's birthday party, that conversation came up and we said, well, why don't we do a cuddle party? Why don't we do a men's circle with men only? And so Sprout and Kenny and I are organizing a men's healing circle on February 22nd. And any of you guys who want to come in, or if you're already in San Diego, most of you are, you're welcome and invited. And Michael, I want to talk to you afterwards just to brainstorm with you if you don't mind.
Great. Thanks for doing
Excellent
that.
initiative. That's really exciting. Okay. Beautiful.
Yeah,